Jones Dairy Farm is a seventh-generation family-owned and operated company located in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. For more than 135 years, Jones has been using real, natural ingredients, original recipes, and time-honored traditions to create distinctive and timeless products. Jones is known for producing premium, all-natural breakfast sausage, naturally smoked hams and Canadian bacon, all-natural meatballs, and dry-aged bacon. All certified gluten-free. The Alliance Française of Milwaukee is now enrolling for their winter session, which runs January 5th through March 23rd, 2025. Register now at afmilwaukee.org. Most of their classes are available on Zoom for folks who can't make it to in-person classes in Milwaukee, including group classes for adults and private lessons tailor-made to your needs and goals. Special offer for Total Beginners French 101 is only $275. Register before December 29th to also take advantage of their early bird discount of $30 adult group classes. A bientôt! This is CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Today, when people think of Madison, what comes to mind? Capitol Square, Badgers games, our lakes, State Street? State Street definitely makes the short list. For all of the good and all of the bad, State Street is uniquely Madison. And before we dive into the current state of state, we're halfway through our membership campaign. And I do need to ask more of you to support this show, to become a neighbor. We've dubbed 2026 the year of local. So will you help us out in our little corner of the world? We have a hefty goal of 75 new neighbors in just this 1 week, y'all. And I'm looking for 20 of you to sign up today. For just $10 a month, neighbors keep the show local by supporting local journalism right here in Madison. And there are more perks. Neighbors get ad-free podcasts, a special weekly events newsletter made with love, and this week, new members get a CityCast Madison beanie. 'Tis the season swag. They're really fun. I'm basically not going to stop wearing it through the entire year, even when it gets warm out. All right, y'all? So become a neighbor today by going to membership.citycast.fm. Help us meet our goal. And I mean, truly, what's a better way to support local than supporting the show that connects you to everything Madison? Alrighty, again, that is membership.citycast.fm. You can learn more there and become a neighbor today. All right, let's get local and talk State Street. Cap Times feature reporter Ashley Rodriguez recently dropped a cover story all on the state of state. Your feature last month was titled, quote, "What's Up with State Street?" And we're going to talk about exactly that. Ashley, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's very exciting. And also joining me is our very own executive producer, Madisonian and UW-Madison alum, Hayley Sperling. Hey, girl, hey.
Hi, Bianca. Hi, Ashley. I'm excited to talk about State Street today.
Yes. And Ashley, it's so funny because we've been talking about wanting to do a show on State Street forever. And then you had this cover piece like, oh, perfect. Ashley's on the scene. So help us settle a debate here. Has State Street changed dramatically in the past 5 years? Like, what's the state of state?
I feel like I have to preface any conversation that I have about State Street by saying that I am not from Madison. I moved to Madison in 2021, but as I was reporting this story, the answer is both yes and no, which is kind of a cop-out answer. But in certain ways, no, the street really hasn't changed. It's still the lifeblood of Madison. It's still one of the most iconic, absolute pictures of Madison. I had a quote that actually I ended up taking out because I'm going to use it for a different story. But one of the sources that I talked to is when you think of Madison, you think of this iconic view when you're sitting on State and looking at the Capitol. That's the picture of Madison. So that hasn't changed at all. But in other ways, yes, it has. And it's because of COVID, because COVID changed the way that we consume things. And also, retail is totally different. So some of the folks that I talked to, a lot of the retailers who work on the street were like, yeah, my businesses are totally different. So in certain ways, absolutely the same. And in certain ways, very, very different.
Yeah. Well, we know that there are changing perceptions. Like, I have my own changing perceptions. I'm like, what's going on State Street? I know, Hayley, you do as well. And we're going to dig into that more because I know you've got more with your reporting, Ashley. And I just kind of want to set the scene of why even care? Like, who's this girl, State Street?
Who is she?
Who is she? Yeah. She's got a storied history and then continues to change every single year. So obviously, State Street means a lot to many people and means different things. Like, it's this stretch of road, which connects the state capital to UW-Madison. And people have so many memories, if they've called Madison home or just they visit, and they come and celebrate. A lot of people, State Street is the place to go. And Ashley, when you set out to report your feature, how did nostalgia influence how folks talk to you about State Street?
I would say nostalgia was probably the number one thing that came up a lot in my reporting. Everybody I talked to had some memory of State Street being formative for them in some way. So like Mike Verveer, who's the alder for the area, he's the alder for kind of the area of State Street closest to the Capitol. He was telling me about how when he went to UW-Madison and he moved into his first dorm, the dorm was on State Street. One of the realtors that I talked to, Heather Ewing, she's from McFarland, and she thought that State Street was like the big city. And she talked about going into the department stores that used to be on State Street and thinking like that was like the biggest adventure like she had ever had as a kid. And a lot of people talked about their childhood memories of State Street, of it feeling like the most exciting part of Madison. And I think that that was really fun to be able to hear these stories, because that's the best thing that you can hope for as a reporter, that someone will tell you a story. And everybody I talked to had stories about State Street.
Yes, such a rich topic. And Hayley, do you have any, I know that you must have some favorite memories of State Street.
Do I have memories of State Street, Bianca? Yeah, I mean, I'll preface too for Ashley, I'm not from Madison originally. I moved here in 2013 to go to UW-Madison and then just ended up staying. Here we are 10 plus years later. How time flies. But what's crazy for me about State Street is that it was actually the first place that I lived as a non-UW student. So I graduated from UW and then immediately moved to State Street and lived on State Street for 2 years. And honestly, I would have lived there a lot longer had I not had horrific neighbors. But that is a story for not this podcast. And I think the thing for me on State Street is that it did always feel like a home to me. It didn't feel like big city. It felt very navigable. It felt like a place where I could go down the street and get what I need. I could get a cup of coffee. I could go to the farmer's market in the mornings. And then I could also, avoid the farmer's market at peak hours and watch people go by from my balcony. That was always fun too, right? I also have very distinct memories of watching Iron Man on State Street. We've talked about that on the podcast before too. And just the community aspect of it all, I think it is this sort of gathering place for people, and more so even these years, I think, truly. We'll get into that later in the podcast, but I think State Street, it's a very nostalgic place for even a person like me who hasn't even been here that long, right? I've got these memories from, 5-7 years ago, and they do stick with me. I've got a lot of thoughts on former shops, Freak Fest, of course, RIP, and all of the debauchery that happened there. But I love State Street. Bianca, I know you've got some memories too.
Yeah, and I think you've been here a decent amount of time, and especially having lived on State Street itself, you're a great person to talk to about this. I am tickled pink and was laughing so hard trying to pull together. I'm like, okay, what memories do I have? And I was like, okay, I bought my prom dress on State.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did. With my own money, $300 cash.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that store is a different store now, still sells dresses. And when I was visiting UW-Madison, I made the horrible mistake. Actually, I can blame Michael Muzinski, my best friend, for driving down State Street, which you're not supposed to do. And that was quite a little moment. Biking with my big sister in our summer dresses and her cute boyfriend. When I was a freshman, I was like, oh my God, I'm so cool. I'm in Madison, finally. And my first date on State Street. This is problematic. I drank Franzia at Espresso Royale in coffee cups with my college friends in the back because we also knew the people working there.
That sounds right.
Yeah. I danced to Teach Me How to Bucky, Teach Me How to Dougie at the Orpheum with the guys that did that music video, and they threw out a shirt, so I'd be wearing that shirt. Ran around, Freak Fest, of course, was so iconic. I've been heckled on State Street, cajoled, consoled, inspired. I think a better question would be like, what hasn't happened to me on State Street or many people? Like, it is such a place, and especially coming from, I guess, a smaller town, Baraboo, like 10,000 people. It was the big city, and State Street was the destination. And I think what we constantly are talking about on the show is like turnover on State. And I don't know, Ashley, if you want to share any memories of your time here, you certainly can.
I know. I'm trying to think because I don't have so I moved here when I was like 34. So I don't have as many and also we moved during peak COVID, right? So I don't have those iconic memories, but I'm thinking about what you were saying about what hasn't happened to you on State Street. And there's this one episode of How I Met Your Mother where they talk about the 3 things that make you a New Yorker. And one of them is crying on the subway, stealing a cab and stuff like that. I'm what are the 3 things that make you a Madisonian that need to happen to you on State Street? Maybe that's the thing we leave this podcast with, is the 3 things that make you a true Madisonian. And then I'm going to go and do all of them today.
I love that.
Yeah, there's no time like the present. I mean, one of the things that's really funny is I came to it talking about where I bought my prom dress, is that there's so much turnover on State Street, and there are places though that have turned over, and then a new business of a similar aesthetic or selling similar food, like sushi restaurants. I had a favorite sushi restaurant that became a new sushi restaurant. There's just so much turnover, so we'll have to think about that one. And we did do a call out to our listeners to get their thoughts about State Street and how it's changed and their perception. We got Sebastian who called in and left us a voicemail. Let's hear that.
Hey, I'm Sebastian. I live in the Greenbush neighborhood, and I'm concerned about State Street. I used to work at Portobello's, and I heard they're tearing it down, and that's so sad. I don't know. It's got a nice courtyard. I think it's a beautiful place, and it's just sad, and I don't want the rest of State Street to go that way. All these historic old buildings being torn down. I don't like it. I don't know. And in the past couple of years, there's been a lot of weed shops and stuff, and they all say it's it's legit. It's the normal stuff that you find anywhere else. I don't know. Maybe. I'm not sure. I'd like to know more. All right. Love you. Bye.
Love you. Sebastian, literally with you on both fronts. I'm just I don't know. It feels different. Things are changing. I don't know, but it matters. And especially Portobello, it's right off of State Street. And I think the right off of State Streets count in this conversation. Ashley, have you heard people in your reporting tell you that they're worried about State Street?
A little bit of yes and a little bit of no. So definitely people have told me that they're worried without question. And I think a lot of that does have to do with the nostalgia that you feel, especially witnessing something that you have seen in such formative times of your life change is concerning. It raises alarms. And I will say, to go back to what Sebastian was talking about in his voicemail, one area that I just could not cover to the depth that I wanted to, and I hope that I do get to do later, is the proliferation of cannabis shops on State Street. That was an area where the moment I touched it, I was there's so much more to this that's completely separate from even the conversation about State Street, more just about cannabis shops in general. So I'm hoping to do that story soon. Maybe we'll talk later about that.
All right, Sebastian.
Yeah, no, it's coming.
Look out.
I did think about it. It just didn't fit in the context of this story that I was trying to tell. And that was actually one of the big challenges of this story, was where do I put the parameters? You know what I mean? Initially, I was looking at this big idea of how has State Street changed over time? I wanted to tell this big historical story. And that just immediately was no, that's not going to be possible.
Too big.
So I ended up narrowing it from 2020 to 2025. So right before COVID started to where we are right at now. So there's so much that I didn't get to touch. I touched a little bit about housing. I touched a little bit on historical preservation. I talked to Rick Chandler, the president of the Madison Trust for Historic Preservation, and he had a lot of really interesting things to say about what does it mean to preserve something, and do we just preserve everything? And he's no, we don't preserve everything. And we also are interested in obviously preserving important areas of State Street. So they actually did a lot of work to preserve 3 buildings on the 400 block. They successfully did that, I believe, last year. I'm not 100% sure when that happened. But then they were also talking about using something again differently is also fine with us. And we don't have to preserve necessarily everything, but we do look to preserve the things that are historically significant. I think people want to think about this as a binary. Either we preserve everything or we knock everything down. And that's absolutely not what's happening from my reporting, at least. There seems to be a good mix of people who are working to preserve what's important to the street while at the same time acknowledging that the city is, I don't know, you folks have seen it, wildly different, even in the last like 5, 10, 15 years.
It really is so much that's going on. And I am glad that you did choose this narrow scope for your story because, you know, I feel like we are often asking what's up with State Street just about every 5-ish years or so, you know, like something's flipped over and it's time that we do this story again. And it's nice to like capture that moment in time. But like what's really resonating is that, you know, we're often posed with this question in Madison of what's worth saving. And this is really reminding me of a conversation you had, Bianca, like in earlier beginning days of this podcast with historian Stu Levitan, who really kind of like got into, you know, what landmarks Madison cares about and also coming to terms with the fact that, yes, we are a growing and changing city and we need to make room for that growth somewhere. And that's going to come at the expense of some of these old buildings. And yeah, I remember that whole saga with the 400 block of State Street. And I understand it to an extent, right? Like save these things because they're old and they have character, but also we know things that are old and have character also tend to have a lot of problems. And are we going to invest all the money that it takes to fix those? So it really is, people need to be thinking about the long term when they're like, let's save this. It's like, okay, let's talk about the cost of saving this because it might actually be cheaper to not.
Yeah. Hayley, I'm glad you brought up the Stu Levitan conversation. So definitely folks out there listening, we got really into that historical preservation component, including that block and with those 3 buildings. And I remember my impression looking at them, and this was kind of brought up, was like, those
right.
are the ones you're trying to, because they're not that cute. Like, and like, I guess I am not on the historic preservation board, and cute might not be a category, but they were like, they are historic, but are they historic and meaningful? Obviously they were determined to be so, but like it's this total pull and push situation of all of these competing factors. And like, whose State Street are we even keeping? Like, Ashley, to the point that you brought, like, you had to narrow your scope to the past 5 years. Like, there is the State Street that I remember from 12 years ago, the State Street from the 90s, the State Street from the 60s. Like, there's a lot to consider, and there are different people's impressions and feelings. And also, yeah, Hayley, like, some of these older buildings have problems.
Yeah, and to that point, one of the things that I was really keen to do in this story was make sure that I got the voices of young people. So the story opens with somebody who grew up in Madison, but goes to UW-Madison now, Sam, who is like so generous with his time. And he was just telling me about like growing up in Madison and how, again, he, like a lot of people, had these really nostalgic memories of State Street, specifically the soap opera, which is obviously still there. It's been there since 1972. It's one of the oldest continuous. Yeah. Iconic businesses. One of the things that really makes the street what it is. He's a student now at UW, and he's like, yeah, like I don't see this new stuff on State Street really changing the material, like, meaning of State Street. Like, I do go to the Target. The Target was like a whole thing. But I thought a lot about it. I have this idea in my head that I'm going to write a story that's like a brief history of the Target on State Street. So but we'll see if that ever comes out.
Do it. Like, it wasn't there when I was at school, but I've gone to it since. Like, it's convenient. Might as well bring it to the people. Otherwise, you have to drive out to the other one.
But one of the things that I thought was so interesting is when I talked to Matt Trammell and Jason Ilstrup from downtown Madison, and they're like 50% of the business that Target does is grocery, which I was like, that's wild. And it's like the kids are obviously, I don't mean to say kids in a pedantic way. The young adults that use that area need it. So like, how do we acknowledge that the demographics of the area are changing and that necessitates certain things to change?
That's something that I've thought about a lot, honestly. You know, it's like, how do we balance that charm with the utility? Because people think Target on State Street, oh my God, like what does the world come to? But it's like, we need a grocery store. These students and also humans of Madison need a place to buy their goods and to get things done. And maybe a Target, even, it's like a Target Express, whatever. Like maybe it's not a bad thing. It's helping people live their best lives in Madison. And I do think that like the city is kind of doing its part to kind of preserve that charm of State Street in different ways. We're talking about things like the pedestrian mall project that actually was a pretty big success. Things like the night market, investments in infrastructure and seating and whatnot. So, I think it is a delicate balance, a delicate line to walk. But I think so far Madison is doing a pretty decent job, if I dare say so.
I love that you mentioned some of these like positive changes too, like the pedestrian walkway being a success. I think Alder Verveer talked about how they're going to bring that back in the next couple of years. I think not even years, maybe even just like next year. And, extending outdoor seating, kind of keeping that in the wake of some of the COVID restrictions that we were faced with. There are so many amazing positive changes too. And I also want to highlight that like with change comes like some really cool stuff that maybe we didn't get to do in the past too.
Have you ever tried Jones Dairy Farm all natural chicken sausage? It's full of flavor and protein. The no antibiotics ever version is a fan favorite at Costco. Chicken sausage is a great alternative to pork sausage because it's lower in fat but not flavor. They're fully cooked, making breakfast quick and easy. They're recommended heated up in the air fryer, making them perfectly crispy on the outside and juicy on the inside. Find Jones chicken sausage in the freezer section since they don't use any preservatives. Jones, making breakfast better since 1889. Does this holiday pattern sound familiar? You tell yourself, I'll get thoughtful gifts this season. Panic last minute and then buy a gift card? Yeah, this year I say skip the panic and give an aura frame. I'm not gonna lie, I'm currently noodling hard on my Secret Santa gift. Why oh why is it so difficult to find a personal gift for the people we love? Well, a digital picture frame that holds unlimited free photos and videos is a pro move. With an aura frame, you can preload photos to it before it ships, add a personalized message, and then stay connected all year by sharing photos and videos effortlessly from your phone. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames. Named #1 by Wirecutter by using promo code CITYCAST at checkout. That's AURA frames.com, promo code CITYCAST. This deal is exclusive to listeners and frames sell out fast, so order yours today to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Hey, Bianca here. I love Madison, and I never feel more connected to it than when I'm out and about at an iconic Madison spot and see my fellow Madisonians just living their best lives. Whether it's while I'm strolling down State Street, dancing on the Monona Terrace rooftop, sitting lakeside and peering out over our gorgeous skyline and parks, I really cherish seeing other Madisonians right there with me, laughing and enjoying our beautiful city together. That feeling of deep connection with the city is why we created the CityCast Madison Neighbors program. Yes, CityCast Madison Neighbors is a way to support this podcast and keep it going, but it's also a way of getting more out of the city you love. When you're a CityCast Madison neighbor, you get an early look at events coming up around town. You get to shout out local nonprofits or businesses you love on the pod, and you get to join us for members-only experiences around the city, like touring the state capitol or grabbing happy hour. It's a deeper way of living in Madison and a way of making local your top priority. Join CityCast Madison Neighbors by going to membership.citycast.fm. That's membership.citycast.fm. And join now so you can get a CityCast Madison beanie. Warm that beautiful head of yours with our swag. In terms of the material vibes of State Street, there are some stalwarts that have made it over the years, like the Orpheum, 1927. I have a record that I have up in my house of State Street, and it's like from the 60s, 70s. And there's the Orpheum sign. Like that, there are some of these older places, Badger Liquor, Triangle Market, Nick's Restaurant, no longer Nick's, still there. I think one of the issues that people are bringing up are concern around small local businesses versus big, large franchises coming in and pushing them out. Ashley, I know you talked to several downtown business leaders about this situation in your story. What do the numbers tell us about what's happening on State Street?
So the downtown Madison folks, they release like this thing called like State of Downtown like every year. But one of the numbers that they released was that like 80% of the businesses in, I want to say it's the business improvement district. So that includes State Street. It's primarily anchored by State Street, but it also includes the Capitol and some other like kind of off streets there. 80% of those businesses are locally owned. And then I think something like of those 20% that are not locally owned, like I think 7 or 8% are like regional chains. So like you think of Colectivo, which is based in like Milwaukee, for example. So I was surprised when I saw those numbers, because I think it's really easy to see like the big flashy chains like the Raising Cane's, which moved in, and I talked to some of the students about that, the Sweet Green, and those are mostly on the 600 block, mostly closer to the university. You see those move in and you're like, oh my gosh, there's this like total corporate takeover. But the numbers illustrate 80% of the businesses are still locally owned.
I had a meltdown when I saw the Fjällräven Swedish like clothing company move onto State Street. I was like, State Street's over.
But they're gone. They're not even there anymore.
They're not even there. They didn't stick. But I remember having that impression. And Hayley, hearing those numbers, does any of that surprise you?
Honestly, it kind of does. Like, because being removed from it, I'm like, oh yeah, State Street, it's all chains. And it's just, I feel like Paul Soglin when I'm like, oh, it's all bars down there.
It's always been bars.
It's always been bars. But when Soglin like just kind of went on this huge rampage back when I was in college, maybe this was around like between 2015 to like 2017, he was basically like, no more bars on State Street. We're ending this, like no more liquor licenses, and just like went on this tirade. But anyways, I digress. It like being removed from it, I just feel like I do see those big stores like, oh my God, everyone's going to the Raising Cane's and the Sweet Green on State Street, and like what else is there? But then when I actually go down on State Street, I'm like, oh, this is a cool little shop that I didn't know opened up. I mean, you talk to the folks, actually, I know the folks at August who have been there forever. There's still thrift shops down there. There's still B-Side Records down there. There's so many new locally owned food and drink businesses down there. I mean, we'll throw to our boy Sebastian. There's a lot of new, locally owned weed stores. Don't know how he feels about that, but like the fact that hearing that it is actually 80% locally owned is surprising to me. But then when you go down there, it's like, okay, yeah, I guess this does track. It makes sense.
Are there any other trends in terms of the businesses that we're seeing come to State Street that you've noted, Ashley?
So when I talked to Alder Verveer, he talked a little bit about, especially like this like Gilman Street area, about how a lot of Asian-owned businesses are opening up in that area, which is really, really cool. And he talked specifically about how a lot of owners are buying buildings there too. So there's some longevity that can go into that. Again, that's one of those things that I would love to report more on. I'd love to explore more. And then another thing too, and I have to maybe go back into my reporting on this, there is a little bit of a shift, it seems, from State Street being primarily retail focused to it being more food and beverage and services oriented. And I wanted to know what services meant. So actually in a follow-up story that I did on the report that DMI released, I asked Jason about that. I was like, what do you mean by services? And he's like, well, more people live downtown. So services like a vet's office or like going to a nail salon to get your nails done. So there's also that reality too, that there are more things on State Street and just downtown in general that are catering to people actually living there.
That's fascinating. I mean, that's one of the things we talk about so much when State Street comes up is like all of the high rises. Like, I think that's a visible change surrounding State Street, and just talking about so frequently, Madison's population is growing, and people do want to be by the city center. And also it made me think when you're talking about the 600 block and more international businesses coming in, restaurants, we had a episode on Izakaya Koriyama, the Japanese restaurant, and like they had Chicago locations first and decided Madison's actually a really good place to have our business, and I hear that is really popular spot.
Yeah, I interviewed him right when he opened, and he told me a little bit about his story and how he chose Madison, and then I had dinner there. I got there like at 5:00, like right when they opened, which is not a time I normally eat dinner, but the minute I got there, it was like humming and packed and like buzzing. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, this is so cool. And I wonder what that means about like what people are looking for from their experiences. Heather Ewing, who was so fascinating as a source, she started talking a lot about what she's seeing like in other municipalities. And she's really seeing like the effects of COVID, really getting people to think about like what actually makes me happy. Like, what are the businesses or things I want to engage with that actually make my life better? And she thinks that that's what like the future is going to look like more businesses like maybe Izakaya Kurama that have like karaoke and like cater to like a vibe where you're like hanging out and doing something might open up. Or she, the example that I gave her when I was trying to understand what she was talking about, I was like, oh, okay, so you see someone who like is working downtown and they like go to a Pilates class like after work or something like that on State Street. She's like, yes, exactly. People seeking out experiences that like make their lives measurably better.
Gonna shout out Underground Self-Defense on State Street, which we all love. They have fantastic self-defense classes.
I love them so much. And I went there so often when I lived on State Street because that was basically my gym, right? You go and you get like an hour worth of kickboxing. And man, that is a workout. And oh my God, can I just say, if there was a nail salon when I lived on State Street, that would have been such a game changer for me. You guys know I'm all about getting my nails done, but like it's where people live. It's how we get to do what we love to do. And Madison, we love saying, it's this great walkable city with all the amenities and resources. But like when you really come down to it, does every neighborhood have that? I'm happy to see that State Street is growing into that. And again, serving the people that live there, not just show up there. Because I mean, a huge population of the folks that do frequent State Street, and I know this came up in your reporting, Ashley, are tourists in general, right? Like that's a big market for downtown.
That was like the most surprising thing to me. And maybe this is my own naivete, but when I was talking to the folks about State Street, and they were like, yeah, it's a huge tourist hub. I'm like, wow, who's coming to Madison? Like, that's so cool that people are seeing Madison as this like destination to go on vacation. That was awesome to me.
Yeah. A lot of places we're talking to lately are saying that they're thinking about people coming here from Chicago, which is really awesome. You mentioned COVID. We're talking about the pandemic. And I'm curious how that really impacted State Street and like, have we seen a bounce back? Because I think one of the things that comes up a lot and my memory, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many places closed. And just walking through a couple of the blocks and feeling like there are a lot of empty businesses.
I think for the most part, in terms of storefronts, I think State Street has mostly like quote unquote recovered. And recovered is like a complex word because if a business is still open, but like their business is very different, like would we call that recovered? I don't know. It really depends on the business. But for the most part, the number of empty storefronts obviously peaked during COVID, and that's for the most part pretty much bounced back. And so is foot traffic as well. In terms of like how the businesses operate, so that was actually one of the things that did seem very different to me. So when I talked to Rob at August, he told me that, before COVID, like 10% of his business was online e-commerce, and now it's 60%. And that's like not just a blip that happened during COVID. That seems to be like just forever changed in his business. He could speak more to that, obviously. I'm interpreting that based on the conversations that I had with him, but I have to imagine that that's true for a lot of retailers, that the way that we consume things now is just different. And I imagine a bunch of restaurants would probably tell you that too. I have to imagine that more people are eating out. I have to imagine that more people are using Grubhub and Uber Eats and things like that. I have to imagine that people are just maybe not dining in as often as they maybe once were. So while there are certain measurable things that probably are quote unquote recovered, like foot traffic, like the storefronts, the way that a lot of these businesses obviously have to operate is totally different.
Well, Ashley, it's so fun. You are not alone in being newer to Madison, even the past 5 years. So much has happened in 5 years. And I appreciate your question that you threw out. So I'm going to wrap this conversation with that. Earlier, you said, like, what are 3 top experiences anyone who is new to State Street should have? So I'll start and give you my 3, which I'm thinking Paul's Club. So obviously there's Paul's Books. You can't go there, but you can't go to Paul's Club and see the tree inside of a bar. That's number 1. I'm thinking if you drink alcohol, if you do not, this might be less interesting, but still fascinating anthropologically, go to Ian's at 1:30 a.m. after a night out, one way or another, even if you weren't drinking alcohol, but if you were, the carbs really help, and see the humanity that is there.
Witness it
And experience it and get yourself a mac and cheese slice. And so you got to go get a Halloween costume from Ragstock. No plans. Yeah, you have to go in and like pick the costume with no plans. They've got everything.
They go all out for Halloween, and that was literally going to be one of my top three.
I'm sorry, I forgot one. And
No, that's good.
No, that's good. Well, that's good. That's good. That means like we've got something here, right? Going Halloween shopping at Ragstock on State Street is peak Madisonian experience. And they know that they have a lock. They have a chokehold on Halloween. They start that stuff like a month early, and then they're also very strict about returns and whatnot. So like, go and take a look a couple of times. I will say it is chaos. I'll even add to Bianca's, go into Ragstock like the day before Halloween and try not to die because it's terrifying. I think my other like pinnacle State Street experience, like what makes you a Madisonian, I think similar to Bianca's like experiencing Ian's at night, I would just say like walk the entirety of State Street at night. Bonus points if it's winter and there's a light little flurry happening. It is pure magic. It is something that's like, wow, I live in a beautiful city.
You're trying to write a rom-com here.
Right. Maybe that'll be the off time show. And then I'm going to go kind of, again, the cutesy route. Shop at Anthology, because that is like my favorite little knick-knack print store. They've got everything you need. They highlight a lot of local artists. There's a lot of fun people there. I love it. And while you're there too, for more shout outs to local shops, get some bubble tea from Sencha, because we love our friends at Sencha.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. I will say, okay, so when I first moved to Madison, I had a friend of mine who went to law school here, and he happened to be here like for a day. And the first place he took me to Library Mall. He took me to like all of the like carts there. And there's the one specific one, and I never remember what the name is, where everyone gets juice.
Fresh, cool drinks.
Yes. Yeah. And so he took me there, and then he took me to Mediterranean Cafe.
Oh, duh. Peak.
I would put that in my like anthology, if only because that was like my first experience of Madison.
And I guess I'll just, in the spirit of Rob, who's mentioned this on the podcast, he and I on this, B-Side Records and Jazzman. Like maybe, I know it's for men, but like go shop at Jazzman.
I would say go shop at Jazzman. I was thinking that too.
I want their clothes. Like that's been there since I've been coming to Madison, and B-Side Records. Well, I just want to say one more defunct store that would fall into men's clothing, but also all gender clothing, which is Sacred Feather, the men's hat store.
Yes.
Oh my God, yes.
I feel like a feather in our cap before we sign off of this incredibly fun show.
Chef's kiss, B. That's a good that's a real good one to end on.
I did learn that building is like the only residential like structure left on State Street.
Wow. And that's part of why it stands out, I bet. Oh my gosh. I love it. Well, Ashley, thank you so much for coming back on CityCast Madison to talk State Street. This has been so much fun.
Thank you for having me.
And Hayley, before I let you go, we have a little bit more to talk about. We're halfway through our last membership drive of the year. And I want to know, do we have more people to thank?
We do. I want to give a big thank you to our newest neighbor, Steve C. Shout out to Steve. He is a retired professor who recently published a memoir and wants to connect with more folks in Madison about it. And I think that's pretty freaking cool.
I think it's really cool, and like such a good city full of intellectuals and people who want to connect over books. I mean, how much do we talk about the Wisconsin Book Festival here on the show? So I think our neighbors are honestly some of the coolest people in Madison. So he joined the right club. He is in the right place. Steve, talking to you. Thank you for joining, because the folks in our neighborship program, they come from all walks of life and come together as neighbors because they also want to see the city thrive, which is just a fulfilling thing to connect with others around.
Yeah, that is so, so real. So, like, big shout out to all of our current neighbors. There are literally hundreds of you out there. We see you, we hear you, we want you in our inbox, we want to hear your voicemails. Your support keeps our show and our small team of local journalists going. And, you know, if you're a neighbor or just out there listening and think you know someone who might also benefit from a CityCast Madison neighbor membership, I've got some good news. This is actually some new news. You can actually gift a CityCast Madison neighbor membership, which is pretty neat. I think it's perfect for anyone who loves Madison, the friend who's always looking to try new spots, or the neighbor who just keeps you in the loop, right?
Absolutely. Like, I'm really stoked about this. This is the season of giving and like talking about what do you give for that secret Santa? Like, what do you give to maybe you have someone who's moving to the city or has moved away and they miss being connected. Like, heck, I mean, maybe they'd have to come back from the member events, but there are other perks involved. So I really do love this thing. Like, you can gift CityCast Madison. It's beautiful, and this is new this year, something we haven't done before, but it's perfect for the holiday season. So if you want to give something meaningful, something that deepens local connection, gifting a CityCast Madison Neighbors membership is a great way to do it. How? Visit membership.citycast.fm/gifts to give the gift of CityCast Madison Neighbors this holiday season. The prices are the same, $10 a month or $100 a year.
Yes. And since it is a gift and we love giving, of course, the gifted membership also comes with our cute new beanie, the swag that we're going all for this membership campaign. And even if you just become a member during this campaign, you will get that beanie. We all want that beanie. I really want the beanie. That's all I'm saying.
I really want the beanie too, and I can't wait to see someone else wearing the beanie. And we already know some of y'all folks have beanies on the way, so get in line. 'Tis the season for swag. Sign up today. Give the gift of membership of community. Head to membership.citycast.fm/gifts or just membership.citycast.fm to learn more. That's Ashley Rodriguez, feature reporter at the Cap Times, and our very own executive producer, Hayley Sperling. That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm your host, Bianca Martin. Don't forget, you can support the show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Madison neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. And if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this episode with someone who misses the way State Street used to be, or someone who's excited about what State Street might become? Forward! Maybe it's turning British. All right, lots of international stuff on State Street. All righty, y'all. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, take good care and thanks for listening.